Hey, everybody, welcome back to Contest Prep University. Joe Klemczewski and Adam Atkinson. We're going to talk about the perfect entry point to your contest prep. And I want to cover a lot of things that we have discussed before just briefly, so they're on the table. But I want to get to some new content, Adam, that could help people with some kind of advanced thought processes in how they're handling their contest prep. But I remember a couple times as an amateur and a pro, you get into more of a meta flow with your goals. And so I'm competing for a pro card or I'm competing for this particular pro title. And, those dates are on the calendar. And just because they are there, you think, that's when I'm going to compete. Reverse engineer it. Here's when I start prep. And we don't often give thought to some of the other goals, the finer tuning kind of goals with how we actually look. Are we taking enough time? How does it work with our family, our occupation? Are we mentally ready? So when you are discussing this with clients, and a client is pretty open-minded and says, "Hey, what do you think about this?" What are the kind of steps you go through in helping them decide if this is a good entry point for a prep?
Yeah. So the first thing is just them being ready in a lot of aspects, and we'll get more into that. But then there's also reasons that people may not be ready, and that really depends on throughout the check-in process. Like, where's some boxes that have not been checked in the off season that maybe we should look into before we start the prep? So, a plan on paper is always great, but it's only a good plan if it's being coached through. And that's always what we're dealing with as coaches right now is we're fighting the battle of coaching athletes versus coaches who are giving out plans for their athletes and maybe coaching them through it, but not really, and I think that's great about what you and I do is, some of these takeaways can be really important on information that your clients give you on whether they should even start that prep or maybe they're midway through the prep and we start finding some things and we decide to delay the date.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting to me, and we've talked a lot about the evolution of the sport in terms of even how we interact with it, what the culture is behind physique sport. And just in the last couple of weeks, I've had three clients hire me at the beginning of prolonged off seasons. And a lot of times, people hire us with the understanding that you try to manage the budget, and so I want to hire a coach kind of just for the end. I'll even start my prep and my diet and just jump in for the last couple of months with somebody. So it's very rare for somebody to say, "Well, I competed last year. Here's my contest history. Now I want to take a 2 or 3 year off season. I want to work with you for the entire time and just make sure, as you said, Adam, all those boxes are checked. We're doing everything we need to achieve the goal, which is to win at this level." And it's brilliant. I mean, I'll quote you. It's brilliant to have that kind of a long-term mindset because for a lot of other people, as I mentioned, it's just the fact that it's the next year, the next year, the next year. We're desperate for a win. We got close this time. We think we can do it next time. And you don't really give yourself enough time to make those pertinent changes to your physique.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just
So,
kind of taking a chance on who shows up versus how you show up.
yeah, and we've talked a lot about even the mental aspects. I said it briefly at the intro, but if you have familial obligations, if it's just not the right time for you occupationally, and yet you think, well, I'm ready physically, I'm ready mentally, I've taken the right amount of time, I have to go for it. That can also create some problems and some friction. I remember the couple of times I did that where it was just the next logical step. And it was not just a grind on everybody else in my life, but I didn't enjoy it either. All of those stressors were still there. And I did not perform at my best. I mean, it just did not cohese into the kind of a prep I wanted. At other times, when I just made sure, I'm going to get all these other areas of my life ready, then it did go much more smoothly, and the results were much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, when do you think is a point in time when you should just yank somebody, so to speak. Because a lot of times clients will say, look, I want you to give it to me straight. Should I or should I not compete? Am I going to be ready or not? So what are the different scenarios you see when you should just probably delay or postpone?
I think one of the biggest ones as we were talking about this topic that came to mind is and sometimes clients won't come forth with this, but you find it during the prep, is if they think competing is going to fix something in their life, whether it be validation, maybe they feel like body fat's too high and they think immediately going into a prep's going to fix that, which it can. But, for my clients and my athletes, and, I will say most competitors are going to have a certain lifespan of competing. If I start teaching people they only lean out when they get ready for a show, how do they really manage body fat levels once they're not competing anymore? So one of the big ones I think is harder to track down that I wanted to start with was if you kind of think you're going to fix something with putting a show on the line.
Yeah, I think also of even the geography and the cost. Ironically, tangent to what we're talking about, but I heard a comic make a joke about the difference between, being a groomsman and a bridesmaid in a wedding party. The guy just rents a tux and gets drunk and it's over. The woman has to buy, this huge expensive dress. They're doing hair and makeup and all these things, and it's hugely expensive. And I think that kind of equitable consideration has to be made for these contests as well, and how you're going to prepare for that season. Because the question is, what's next? If you start a prep for this particular contest, what if you win that contest and what if you don't? What would the next step be? Is it some kind of a qualifier where then in 2 months or 6 months you want to do that? Or if you didn't quite hit the mark and you need another contest or two, do you have those lined up again if it's some kind of a qualifying event? And so I think some of my more strategic or competitive clients do have a lot of if then scenarios. Some of them will often give me a contest schedule that has 5 or 6 contests, and they'll say, of course, we're not doing all of these, but if I win this, then we do this. If I don't, then we do this. And so, there's a lot of thought processing go into that, which then again you can reverse engineer expense, time off, how that's going to affect your career and your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you get to the point where besides not just looking your best, is there another type of criteria you use to say this is not a good entry point? Like we're just not ready for this pre-contest season.
Yeah, definitely if they have any health or hormonal issues, that's a huge one. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes with these issues, maybe someone's had a reverse diet go bad and they're wanting to, again, fix it by going into prep. That usually makes it worse. Another thing that pops up a lot with clients can be maybe they're financially unprepared. So, maybe they've alluded to the fact that finances are not great right now. The last thing you want is the client to get to the show and then you see the GoFundMe pop up, and that's not necessarily what that website's for, is making your competition dreams come true. It's usually for people who need financial assistance with medical bills and some tragedy, and not being able to compete on stage doesn't necessarily fall into that category. um, I'd say those are two big ones. Another one is just maybe your relationship with food's horrible still in off season. And that one we kind of see a lot. Maybe they're just not ready to fully commit to tracking that strategically. They like the idea of being lean, but once they get into the process of what that takes, those are two different things.
I've never seen a GoFundMe yet for competitors. That would be kind of funny. I'm sure it has happened though. I mean, you've probably seen it. One of the things I think of, and this will be a little kind of inside baseball coach to coach, nobody else listen in real quick. This is just private between Adam and me. But I'll give you some code language that I use for my clients. And kidding aside, any of my clients listening to this, like this may be something to look for in how I communicate with you. But I do not like to be dogmatic with my clients because I truly don't think I can tell them what's best for them. And even if I have some concerns, there are always pros and cons, and they could prove me wrong. I want them to make those decisions. They live in their skin. They know their lives better than I do. So I will often use that kind of a language, or that kind of language. I will say, well, normally this is what I might tell a client. There's a lot of things that concern me. We haven't had that much of an off season, this, and this. And so are you sure? I want to make sure they're making the decision, but I will voice my questions and concerns. And a lot of times it is that juxtaposition of they haven't had much of a rest, much of an off season. But at the same time, that can be an asset in the fact that you've lost a majority of that body fat. If we've been able to recover enough with food, so food intake is metabolically high enough, and you've gotten your body composition up at least close enough to your metabolic set point where we know there has been some recovery. It may not be the same as a 2 year off season or something that gave you a little more potency, but if it was enough, then the other side of that coin that could be negative is the positive. You're just walking into this next contest season without a lot of work to do. We don't have to drop calories as low. We're not doing as much cardio. So again, even the things that we say might be questionable or a deficit in finding the best entry point, there can always be a correlational positive to that. So, those are the things that are just tough to weigh. And that's why I think this kind of topic is good to think through with our clients and viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to, the physique isn't stage ready. Um, sometimes there's other things people can do that can push them towards that goal. I know a few times this year, well, past year, I had clients do the Angel competition fashion show versus like an actual show. And that was great because it kept their foot on the gas to lose some body fat. And then as long as they nailed their reverse, we can maybe go into a next year contest season and not let things go out of whack, and
Mhm.
give people a mini goal to shoot for.
Yes, man, again, in the last couple of weeks, I've talked to two of my clients about powerlifting specific training. And even though this is very much in vogue, not everybody has associated off seasons with this. But I mean, going all the way to not even paying attention to hypertrophy movements. Let's literally plug into a powerlifting routine and focus just on the movements, just on strength for a while. Maybe it's 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks. Because yes, as an extended off season, when you're trying to prepare for and create the opportunity for a perfect entry point, that can give you a great mental and physical diversion from what you're going to face in prep. I like that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, when I'm looking at if I on paper could say let's create the perfect entry point for a contest prep, I think it is definitely with a lot of forethought in these areas, a literal pro and con grid, and you say, okay, I have had enough of an off season. I feel fully recovered mentally and physically. My body can go through a contest prep without any problems at all, metabolically, physically, just my relationship with food and dieting and calorie deficits. Like I'm on the money. I'm excited. I cannot wait. And then you've crossed those T's, dotted those I's with career and family. And as I said, you're going into it with a great amount of positive anticipation instead of just another thing you got to check off the list. I hope I do it. Sure, I can squeeze it in. Like all of that stuff to me, it are symptoms that it's going to be tougher than you think. I mean, it really has to be the single greatest goal that you can focus on for that 6, 8, or 9 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you have external stress, it just divides you and divides your focus. And, there's definitely a mental aspect to this sport. Some people with genetics that are superior are going to be able to get away with that a little bit better. But that's what's great when you look at these stage physiques. There's so much of the story not being told with just looking at the body on stage.
Absolutely. You just made me think of other performance athletes who, with a more prolonged actual season, 62 games, 142 games, that kind of thing, every night, every day is a different opportunity to accelerate, and you can have a bad day, that kind of thing. It's just not the same with physique sport. So let's finish with a more existential tangent to this topic, which is the entry point that might be your final. Like, how do you know when you're getting ready for your final contest season, maybe your final goal, if at all? Maybe for some people, you just keep going until it's just not convenient. Um, but I wonder, clients that you have experienced doing this with, where you plan that entry point for their bow out of the entire sport, what has that been like with you as a coach?
Yeah, that's always interesting. I think that at that point, when I've had that with athletes, they've definitely competed numerous times, so they're very experienced. I think at that point, it usually ends up for me being their best prep because one, they've had so much experience. They also know if it's their last time doing it, it's all on the line, and that makes it a lot of fun. And at that point, you usually end up ending the journey like, gosh, why would you end here? But also ending on such a high note. And I think we all saw that with Bumstead, like, why would you end here? But also, why wouldn't you? There's a bittersweet part of knowing that you're into a client's last contest prep. And, you know, um, you also end many contest preps with clients not knowing it's going to be your last one with them, and that's hard too. So it's definitely you should go all in all the time, but as you get experienced, me, I haven't competed since 2013, but as I see competitors who were leaner than me, I just think, wow, could I have pushed harder? But now looking back, like back then, I didn't think I could, but now I wonder, was there more I could be doing to, you know, get peeled and get more lines in my glutes? And the curiosity is there.
The never-ending question. That's what keeps us coming back. But I will say you answered my question perfectly from my perspective, and that is that anticipation of knowing this is it. And two things can be true at the same time. And what you juxtaposed there, I think, was very important, which is you should go in with your best all the time, but there is also something extra there when you know this is your last trip. Every workout is a little bit better. Every time you're posing, you're thinking, this is the last time I'm going to be on stage. And so you envision that a little bit better. And I remember for me, literally standing on the stage at the finals, knowing this was it. And I enjoyed it more. Like, I think for the first time ever, I like smiled genuinely on stage, knowing that like I could take my last deep breath on a stage and enjoy it and walk away happy that I did give it my all. Of course, with the caveat, like you said, you often think, did I really? Could I hit another gear? But it's an interesting thing to really contemplate when it's time. And of course, as athletes are famous for, even if you go through that process, there could be some point down the road that you decide to re-enter as a master, or the kids are grown and you want to do it again. I don't think that's any kind of a weird delusion or self-deception, but you really put it away for a time and you were okay walking away. And if there's ever a re-entry point that is fine and good for you, then that's great. But again, those two things can also exist simultaneously.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Adam. Well, thanks again. Great chat, great session on this particular topic. A lot of things we've covered in the past, but I hope with a little bit more perspective and depth. And those of you in our contest prep D1 club, we'll see you and chat about this on the backside. I know a lot of you will have some questions there, and we will see you guys all again next time.